Hello, my name's David Keeton. I'm a railway enthusiast, and my talk today is about the Hull to Scarborough railway line on the 175th anniversary of its opening, which occurs later this year. And this talk forms part of the North Yorkshire County Council Libraries and Information Service Local and Community History series for May 2022. So I'm now going to share the screen with you so that you can follow the talk and the text and some images, and I will share the screen shortly. So the Hull to Scarborough Railway celebrates its 175th anniversary in October 2022. And what we're going to do is do a brief tour of the railway and from Hull to Scarborough in that direction, and so that you can get a flavour of this very interesting railway route. As I mentioned, this talk forms part of the Local and Community History Month for May 2022, and looks at the Hull to Scarborough Railway in its anniversary year and where this influenced the growth of the local economy. I think it's important to give you a little bit of background about the Hull to Scarborough Railway, and I would like you to imagine that you are a passenger on a train at Hull, what is now Hull Paragon Station, and that our train is going to proceed towards Scarborough, calling at stations along the way, which remain open, but you'll pass through a number which have also closed. So initially, we head from the Hull end of the line, but a little background would probably help to set the scene for you. Basically, two aspiring railway companies were interested in building railways in the area: the Hull and Selby, abbreviated to HNSR, and the York and North Midland Railway, abbreviated to York and North Midland Railway. The Hull and Selby Railway had reached Kingston upon Hull to give it its full name in 1840 and had plans to build a line from Hull to Bridlington, whilst the York and North Midland Railway was proposing its own railway from Scarborough to Hull. In fact, the desire of the York and North Midland Railway to control the line to Hull led to an agreement whereby the Hull and Selby Railway leased the lower section to the York and North Midland Railway, which came into effect on the 1st of July, 1845. Both railway companies started constructing the line from opposite ends of the route. The Hull and Selby route had a station originally at Hull Manor House Road, and which preceded Hull Paragon. And the section to Bridlington was constructed, and that opened on the 6th of October, 1846. Meanwhile, the York and North Midland Railway started construction from a junction at Seamer, with the York to Scarborough line reaching Farley the day before the Hull to Bridlington section. Now, was this coincidental, or maybe a bit of healthy competition might have been involved? We may never know. Both these previous sections were relatively flat. However, as you may be aware, the Farley to Bridlington section involves the crossing of the Wolds via Flamborough Head, with significant gradients and engineering works, with a summit of 345 feet above sea level near Speeton. Though this section did not open until a further year had elapsed on the 20th of October, 1847. The new terminus at Hull Paragon was completed in 1848, enabling a direct link between the Hull and Selby Railway at Hassel Road Junction. The Newington or Cottingham branch was retained to enable freight and excursion traffic to avoid the need to reverse at Hull Paragon. Since then, a west to north curve has been installed at Anlaby Junction. These routes became part of the North Eastern Railway in 1872 and were then absorbed into the LNER in 1923 and British Railways at nationalisation in 1948. Following privatisation in 1997, a succession of franchises has been involved with the delivery on the route. Regional Railways North East being the first, superseded by Northern Spirit in 1998, becoming Arriva Trains Northern on the 27th of April 2001, and then a new northern franchise in December 2004, and yet again on 1st of April 2016, and again on the 1st of March 2020, when the nationalised northern trains took over. From December 2015, Hull trains have operated from Beverley southwards on a daily service to King's Cross, initially with the Class 180 Adelante diesel multiple units, and then their bimodal Azuma sets. Now, the tour will start at Hull Paragon Station, head northwards up the coast over the Yorkshire Wolds near Flamborough Head. Then drop down to Hummondby, call at Filey, and then head towards Seymour Junction, where it joins the line from York for the final run into Scarborough. Just a couple of maps to show you the area. So we have here Hull Paragon above the Humber, and Beverley, Driffield and Bridlington and Farley are the prominent stations on the line. And you can probably see that there are other lines which have or do still join this line today. To give you a little bit more detail, this map shows the line from Hull to Beverley, to Driffield and Bridlington, with all the original intermediate stations in between. And it also shows lines which branched off or crossed over the Hull to Scarborough line, which we will refer to a little later in the talk. I have just included this map out of interest. It's not directly linked to our route, but it has to be a map dated pre-1890 because there is no railway from Market Wheaton to Driffield, where that line joined our route. It gives a rough idea of railways in the area in the late 1800s. Now, we are imagining that we're on a train now at Hull Paragon Station with trains ready to depart. It's most likely that you will have a train hauled by diesel multiple unit of the Class 170 or Class 158. The latter can be seen to the left. The other train is probably not going on our route, as that is a Class 185 and would be heading west over the Pennines. Steam specials have operated on the route on a number of occasions. This one is the King Arthur steam locomotive, originally the southern region, and named after knights linked with King Arthur. So this one was called Salamio. The picture is taken roughly about 1984 and shows the large train shed at Hull Paragon. More modern view of Hull Paragon Station. Here we have the full view of the train shed with the Royal Station Hotel behind the train shed, where I will just try and show you the cursor there, above there. And yes, you can see most of the platforms still in use are to the right hand of the photograph, just one train visible there. And that is probably a train, the one train there is probably the Beverley to King's Cross train. The left-hand side of the station has now given way to car parking and also as parking for the buses of East Yorkshire Motor Services. Hull Paragon Station in earlier days, and this was a steam locomotive, 67640, a V1 or V3 tank. They were very similar locomotives, and it's got coaches for the Hull Pullman services taken around about 1960, and we'll be heading off probably towards Doncaster. Hull Paragon in 1968 with a variety of diesel multiple units, and the diesel multiple units here are very much of the period. It's 1968, and they were operating a lot of the trains by this stage. In fact, the Hull to Scarborough line, the diesel multiple unit trains took over as early as 1957 and were very easy to operate as they could be driven from both ends without having to have a full locomotive. This is the first junction after our train has left Hull Paragon. and it's where the line to Driffield and Scarborough parts company with the line to Selby. And this is the West Parade signal box. And those of you with a keen eye can probably spot that there is Hull Victoria Infirmary in the background. Now, this signal box is in the V of the junction, and the other side, which is where the Selby lines go, we have a picture here of a Hull to King's Cross train hauled by Delta class named Pinzer. And you can see the signal box is clearly in the V of the junction here. We're now looking from West Parade Junction, we're looking west, and the Selby lines curve away at the top right, top left of the right of the photograph. They curve away left, and the Scarborough lines head towards the right. And this was a special track recording unit from Network Rail in 2008, heading away from Hull Paragon. Now, this is a picture of Anlaby Junction, and this is looking towards Hessel with a train coming towards Hull. And you can see that there is a link curve turning away to the right of the photograph, and that's for trains to enable them to come from the Selby direction and head towards Cottingham and Beverley and Driffield and eventually Scarborough. A little further round that curve, this is a freight train which is heading north. So it's coming from the Anlaby Junction and is heading towards the West Parade North Junction, which is at the top northern end of the triangle of railway lines. This train is heading towards Cottingham and is in an engineering train. The first station on the line, which is open, is Cottingham Station. And this is in 1984 with the old footbridge and a train heading towards Hull in the platform. This is Cottingham Station again with a temporary footbridge in use whilst the original was revamped during the lockdown period. A lot of engineering works were completed during lockdown. It's an ideal time to do it. This was spring 2021. And shortly before the reopening of the original footbridge after it had been revamped. And the train going under that is a class 170. These are multiple units at the time, typically seen, heading towards Bridlington and Scarborough. We now see the Cottingham Station footbridge revamped by Network Rail. This was completed on the 8th of April 2021. And for this little splendid site here, and you can see that the temporary footbridge is still present in the background, but it's been very well restored. For those interested in finding refreshments, the station, there is a station cafe called the Old Lamprum just in the vicinity of Cottingham Station. This view taken looking towards Hull. The next station up the line is Beverley, and we're looking northwards towards Driffield and Scarborough, and the signal box at Beverley there with the automatic half barrier level crossing. And then we're looking north through the train shed to northwards in the Driffield direction. And Beverley has a number of level crossings because it's very flat and there really isn't the possibility of building bridges to avoid the need for level crossings. This is Beverley Station looking south on what looks to be a rainy day, and you can see we're looking towards Hull, but unusually this train, you can tell by the lights at the front, is actually heading on the wrong line into Beverley from the Hull direction. There are a number of signals here for both lines showing red here in the Hull direction. Usually trains would come into Beverley, local commuter trains from Hull Paragon to Beverley, and a number of them would terminate there, reverse, go back on the other line into Hull. This is Beverley, probably a view around the 1980s. It's one of two remaining stations built by George Townsend Andrews, architect for the North Eastern Railway, on this line. And this is a view looking northwards with a Hull-bound train in the platform there. Beverley Station looking towards Hull with a train ready to depart towards Bridlington. Another fine view of the train shed which affords good shelter to passengers and any parcels. You can see the cycle areas there for people wishing to take their bikes on the train. I'll leave them there. Beverley Station. Now this is this is an historic photograph because it records one of the trains, the 1450 Hull to York, calling at Beverley on the 27th of November 1965, which was the last day of the Hull to York service, and a rather sad day for railway enthusiasts and locals alike. This is north of Beverley Station, which can be seen in the background. So we're proceeding towards Driffield northwards, and this is Cherry Tree signal box, and you can see Beverley Station in the background further down the line. This is Cherry Tree level crossing at Beverley, with a train bound for Bridlington and possibly Scarborough crossing at the moment there, and near to the site of the signal box you saw just in the previous image. Now this is a map of the Beverley area. It's part of an Northern Survey map, and if we just to get our bearings, you can see that Beverley Station is where the cursor is. It's a red rectangle, and the level crossings are marked with a faint red cross. So there's this level crossing to the south of the station. There's Cherry Lane level crossing that we just saw in the previous picture. If we proceed upwards, there's yet another level crossing, and this is just short of what was referred to as Beverley Junction or Beverley North Junction. Signal box had different titles in its history, and you can just see here where the cursor is that the line splits, and the line going just to the left is the original line to York via Market Wheaton. So you can just see that. To give you an idea, here our junction that we've just come from, Beverley Junction, as it was latterly referred to. The line we're going on proceeds up to Arram and Lockington, but the York line via Market Wheaton, Pocklington, headed off for its first station at Cherry Burton. And we can also see the line from Market Wheaton heading towards Driffield as well. This image here is not a good quality image, but I've used it to illustrate the junction. There are very few photographs of the junction with trains on that. This was a signal box here at Beverley Junction, Beverley North. And this train here is heading off towards Market Wheaton, Pocklington, and then York, and you can just make out Beverley Minster in the background. This is all that remains the site of Beverley North Junction in 2004 with an engineering train, and we're looking north, so almost exactly the opposite view to that of the previous photograph. This is the next station on the Hull to Scarborough line. This is a very typical of the area, very rural station. It's Arram Station looking north, and at the time the photograph was taken, then there were gates and a signal box and semaphore signals and lovely lamps as well. The next image is our Arram Station looking north in more recent times, and no signal box now, level crossing with the automatic half barriers, staggered platforms, and one of those rather ubiquitous bus type shelters for giving some shelter to passengers waiting on the Hull and Scarborough platforms. The next station up the line is Lockington, which had a signal box and also automatic half barriers. Sadly, this station and level crossing was the site of a disaster on the 26th of July 1986. The crossing had only flashing lights and no barriers, and a van drove into the path of the 0933 Bridlington to Hull train, resulting in the death of 8 rail passengers, as well as a passenger in the van. it was not until 1988 that automatic half barriers were installed to try and prevent a repeat of the railway disaster. As you can see, the damage is pretty considerable to both road vehicles and the train. We move on now to Hutton Cranswick Station, and this image was taken in 2007. And you can see that the main station buildings tended to be built at right angles to the platform and the direction of the line. And again, we have a station right by level crossing, and this time with a small bus shelter type shelter. Hutton Cranswick again, 16th of June 2014, with the train leaving and heading towards Driffield and Scarborough. And you can see the building to the left here, which was probably a goods shed, and it was typical of the architecture on the line. Now, I'm just showing you a section of the North Eastern Railway tile map, and these wonderful tile maps can be still found in situ at a couple of stations, including Scarborough and also Whitby Station, and they are wonderful to look at and have locations of historical interest as well as the railway interest. Now you can see that probably a little difficult to read. We're coming towards Driffield, that's Hutton Cranswick, and we're coming towards Driffield, which was a junction for several railways. And then we proceed towards Bridlington. This is a map of Great Driffield, as we should call it, really. And from this map, you can see that there were a number of railway crossings. This period of this map is probably late 1920s, or from certainly between 1922 and 1927, because the London and North Eastern Railway is referred to with the ampersand. So it's London and North Eastern Railway. Later, just that was removed, and we've referred to it as the London North Eastern Railway, LNER. Now, on this map too, crosses, faint red crosses, are used to denote level crossings. And you can see that we have here the station at Great Driffield. We have a level crossing there. Great Driffield, we have a level crossing here, and there are in fact two level crossings immediately to the south of the station. Now this line here is the Hull line heading towards Hull. This part of the railway is heading towards Bridlington and Scarborough. Immediately south of the second level crossing, below Great Driffield railway station, there was a double track junction. And we can see here that the lines diverged here, and the Selby and Market Wheaton line diverged to the and crossed to the A163. It proceeded for about half a mile to the another crossing and of the A163, and this was the West Driffield junction. And we can see here that West Driffield junction, the lines here are the Market Wheaton and Selby line goes off to here, and the Malton line goes off to here and immediately reduces to single track at this point. And this photograph was actually taken looking roughly southwest from the guards van of a train all coming off the Malton line in 1956. And you can just see here, there's some wonderful old semaphore signals from the North Eastern Railway days, more modern on the Malton branch and more modern ones on the Selby line. This is Driffield Station as it is today, looking towards the whole direction with the signal box. The original overall roof was removed, I believe, as early as 1949, and replaced with canopies that we see here. And you can see the first of the level crossings immediately beyond the platform end. The second one, if you look carefully, is just by that signal box. This is Driffield Station in the 1920s, when the overall train shed roof was present. And you can also see here a wonderful period piece water tank and period piece station lamps and the signs for the railway. This is looking towards Bridlington, and as you can see, there are quite a number of warehouse type buildings on the right hand side of the line. Before the coming of the railway, Driffield was served by a canal, and it was basically really on the River Hull, and so cargo and freight would tend to be transported on the canal prior to being transported by the railway. The third level crossing, you can just here see where the signal box is under the bridge there. Another view looking westish, southwestish, so the lines curving away to the left are going through Driffield Station, and to the right we have some sidings there. This is a picture at the southwest end or the Hull end of Great Driffield Station, with the station gates box and the level crossing immediately after that. And note that this train with the steam tank engine, which was probably a V1 again, has vans, freight vans in, possibly fish, mixed in and added to the passenger train, which was a common procedure. So this would be taken after nationalisation when steam ruled. The next station to the east of Driffield is Nafferton Station. This train is heading towards Hull, and we are looking towards Bridlington. Again, note the platform, the main station building, is at right angles to the Bridlington-bound platform, as in with some of the other stations. Looking back towards Driffield, so we're looking the Hull direction, this is how the station looks today, with the level crossing and again, barriers rather than gates. The next station along the line is Lowthorpe, which, as you can see, is no longer used, although the Bridlington-bound platform it remains in situ, but not the one on the Hull side. This is the next station area that was located along the line. Again, this is no longer open, but this is the level crossing looking towards Burton Agnes Village. And again, we have a level crossing with automatic half barriers and flashing lights. Now, this was the scene of a tragic accident in September 1947, when an army truck carrying German prisoners of war crashed through the gates into the path of a Hull Bridlington train. 7 prisoners of war and 2 British soldiers were killed. It wasn't the only level crossing in the area where a similar accident happened, and there were accidents. They also happened on the Malton Driffield line. Now we're approaching Bridlington, and the last station before Bridlington that is what was present but is now closed, although the platforms remain here, is Carnaby, and Carnaby is really a suburb of Bridlington with a lot of warehouses and industrial areas, as you can just see on the right-hand side of the photograph. This Class 170 train is heading in the Hull direction and passing through non-stop. Carnaby Station in earlier days, so this is dated 30th of December 1965, level crossing gates, little signal box and platform shelters of the period, and even lamps, oil lamps on the level crossing. Now, we're going to head towards Bridlington and then to Scarborough, and Bridlington Station has recently been re-signalled. That was during October 2021, and the track layout rationalised further. Bridlington had a fine array of semaphore signals which disappeared in the latter part of October 2021, although Bridlington South Box, now known simply as Bridlington, is retained to control the colour light signals, and the final lever frame for the semaphore signals, although detached, is listed and preserved. There are currently 2 through platforms in the bay for the Bridlington to Hull stopping service, but it was originally a terminus station, originally catering for day excursions from the West Riding, and there were 2 further bay platforms for this traffic. The station also boasted until fairly recently a very fine buffet run. Immediately north of the station, the track becomes single line. It's been double so far, just before Key Road crossing, and this followed rationalisation of the route in the 1970s. Just having a look at our tile map here again. So if we bring our cursor, we've come now to Bridlington, which is where the cursor is. It's actually, the writing is in the sea, more or less. We've got Carnaby, and then we've got Bridlington here. And then we're going to proceed up the coast, cross Flamborough Head, and we're going to head towards Filey and eventually towards Seamer and Scarborough. The next few photographs show the engineering work associated with the Bridlington station re-signalling over a 9-day closure of the railway over the school half term last year. All these photographs are taken by myself on Monday, the 25th of October, 2021, and most of the semaphores had gone by this early stage. Only one other photographer was present that day. The photos go in order of our direction of travel from south to north. The first is looking south from Bessenby Road Bridge in not ideal access conditions, as you will see. And the next 2 look north towards the station, past Bridlington South signal box, now just referred to as Bridlington, and taken from the same bridge. The next is looking from the Station Road Bridge, which is the next one up towards the Bridlington station, with just 1 single semaphore left. And finally, we have a view looking into the station from its north side, from the Key Road level crossing, which was only open to pedestrians during the engineering blockade. So there we have a view looking towards Carnaby with the freight train and sidings being removed, signals gone, and they took the opportunity to relay the track and put new ballast in. This is looking towards the signal box at Bridlington, and just as a point of reference, this is the signal box at Bridlington, and the engineering train we saw there is the back of that going towards the station. A signal post where the signal arm has been already removed, which was for sidings, usually for excursion traffic in former days. Similar view, and we move on. And this is taken from the Station Road bridge, and this train came a little earlier before it had progressed, proceeded down the line. The one semaphore signal you can see here, and new colour lights, automatic lights, which will be brought into use once the engineering has been completed round about this area. And Bridlington signal box is present there. This view is taken from north of the station at the Key Road crossing, and you can just see an engineering train here, a vehicle here, road vehicle, and the line goes from single to double track at that point. Bridlington South box from the Bessenby Road Bridge, Bridlington South box with a train when the semaphores were operating, and a final view looking in the Brid direction of a train here coming into terminate at Bridlington. Now this view is taken from the Bridlington station from the Station Road Bridge in the Scarborough direction, and you can see to the left of the picture is a housing estate now, and when we move to the next photograph you will see the relevance of that comment. And to the right we have the bay platform. Now this is Bridlington station as it used to be, and we're now looking at the station as it was, and the housing estate that you saw to the left of the picture is now sort of dead centre here where this train shed was. So the original platforms 1 and 2 from the original 1846 station were under the train shed roof on the right, which was demolished in 1961. Later on, the platforms were removed altogether and the land is occupied by a housing estate. The current Scarborough train platforms numbered 1 and 2 are to the left where the rear coach of a train is standing, just about here. Time for some refreshments. And this is Bridlington Station Buffet in better times. Very sadly, it's not open at present. And it has a really good collection of railway honour. And it's so sound that you're not able to take advantage of it at the moment. So I've included some photographs to give you an idea of some of the items there. So this was the buffet, the bar and the railway honour, and you can see there are adverts for cigarettes. There's a wonderful old telephone where you could put your money in. You can see the bar, slightly spoilt by the modern drinks at the bottom, and a Great Western Railway notice down towards the bottom of the photograph. And notice there are some nameplates above the mirror as well at the top of the photograph. And another view of the bar at Bridlington Station with various signs. And a final view, and it had all sorts of signs from different railways, and some of which I'm no doubt you'll be familiar with from days gone by. Real gem, and it's so sad that we can't appreciate it at the moment. Now, in this image of Bridlington Station, you can see that there are trains in the platforms to the right. Those are the bay platforms or the terminal platforms. And the through lines to Filey and Scarborough are on the left over here, turning away left and heading past in that direction. I think it's important to outline that the history of the line was rather checkered as regards the attempts to close it. So it's had a little bit of a hard time over the years. And a bit of background would indicate of how it's actually been quite a survivor over the years. So the line from Bridlington Station to Seymour Junction is now essentially single track with a double jointed track section between Filey and Hunmanby to facilitate the timetable train crossing arrangements. The background attempts to close the line goes back to 1962. In 1966, there was a serious attempt to close the line following the closure of feeder lines, and in particular the Beverley to York line in November 1965. Beeching wished to close the whole to Scarborough line, but the last manager of the northeastern region of British Rail, Arthur Dean, would have taken closure even further had he had the opportunity. Fortunately, Gerald Fiennes, the first manager of the combined eastern and northeast regions, was convinced that a case could be made to keep the line open with certain rationalisation of facilities. He proposed singling the track from Beverley to Seymour and replacing semaphore signals with colour lights, and all crossings would be replaced with automatic half barriers. In fact, this did not take place, although the stations at Burton Agnes, Carnaby, Lowthorpe, Flamborough and Speeton all closed to passengers in 1970. So we are now going to be heading towards Scarborough, and as Bridlington was originally a terminus, opened on the 6th of October 1846 with a great sumptuous luncheon, the through Scarborough platforms set to the west side. That sumptuous luncheon would have been provided courtesy of George Hudson. Many tourists have travelled on excursions to Bridlington from the West Riding, as well as to Butlins, Filey Camp and Scarborough. Now, immediately upon leaving Bridlington, on the section opened on the 20th of October 1847, we cross Key Road and start climbing to a considerable gradient of 1 in 92, which is quite steep, to cross the Flamborough Head Ridge. Near Sewerby, the line turns north and then northwest, passing Bempton Station, popular for those walking to the nearby Bempton Cliffs RSPB Bird Reserve, to reach a summit at 345 feet above sea level, about 1 mile east of Speeton, where we move from the East Riding of Yorkshire into North Yorkshire. And it was from here that the northbound train of empty stock hauled by steam locomotive K3 class number 61846 ran away on the 25th of August 1956, as the vacuum brake had not been connected, and the driver then put the locomotive into reverse and sounded his whistle continuously as a warning as the train sped down the line. The train ran through Hunmanby, and an alert signal had the presence of mind to divert it onto the Filey Camp line, opened in 1947 at the Royal Oak South Junction, which we'll come to in a minute. The signalman at the camp station stopped another train approaching from the north and limited the damage and avoided any injury to people by diverting it into an empty platform where it came to rest after demolishing the buffer stops. The section from Hammer to Filey is still double track and still has jointed rails, so you can enjoy that diddly-dee rhythm as the train travels between the two. So, north end of Bridlington Station as it is today, you can see that the double track goes into single track, and you can just see that the key road crossing is in the distance, and the climbing starts immediately to gain height to cross the Flamborough Head Ridge. So this is Flamborough Station as it was, with level crossing gates and platforms, double track, of course, throughout originally. Flamborough Station looking to back down the slope towards Bridlington as it is today, single track with a level crossing, and of course this station is closed, so no trains call there, but the buildings happily have survived. Bempton Station, which is open and it serves the local community, and many walkers actually walk the approximately 1 distance mile to the bird reserve at Bempton Cliffs, the RSP Bird Reserve. And the line is quite steep. This view is looking towards Speeton, so roughly west-northwestish, so it's still climbing up to the summit of the line. Bempton Station, train here in steam days, and again, you can see that it's double track. Speeton Station was just beyond the summit of the line. So this is a view looking towards Bempton and Bridlington, and the trains will be still struggling up the slope to get to the summit at that point. And then this is a view looking towards Hunmanby these days. So the line would then drop down on the gradient, still a level crossing. Hunmanby Station, at the south end of Hunmanby Station, and you can see from this view here that there is double track here, and the track then goes into single track just beyond the level crossing, and then proceeds as a single line right through to Bridlington. Another view looking south from Hunmanby Station here, and again you can see where the double track goes into single track just beyond the level crossing, and shelter of some shape or form for passengers there. Now, just beyond Hunmanby Station, there was a level crossing where you can see the cursor. It's on a straight bit of track, and then it proceeded over a bridge, a slight curve, and then came to the junction, the triangular junction for the Filey Camp station. Now, there were 2 junctions of the main line, Hull to Scarborough line. There was Royal Oak North Junction, and there was Royal Oak South Junction. And the Royal Oak North Junction served trains coming in from the south, and Royal Oak North Junction served trains coming from the north. And you can see these junctions here. Royal Oak South Junction, Royal Oak North Junction, which we'll come to in a minute. And then they joined, and there was the line then into the camp, which is marked by the red circle here, and the blue arrow marks the site of the Filey Camp station. And although the bridge across the road to Hunmanby has disappeared, you can still see these embankments here clearly visible as you go along the road. And here is the Filey Camp. Now, this is the level crossing across the Scarborough Bridlington Road at near Royal Oak North Junction, with a train from Hull to Hull coming from the Filey direction and crossing over. And you may note here that the signals are set for the train in the Hull direction, so that head directly towards Hunmanby. On the signals on the right-hand side of the post would have been raised to allow trains to go into the camp station. This was Royal Oak South Junction. It was closed in September 1978 after closure of the Filey camp station in 1977, which preceded the closure of the camp a few years later in the early 1980s. And Filey village can be seen behind the signal box. This is Hunmanby Royal Oak South Junction in September 1950 with a Hunt class steam locomotive named the Grove. This is Filey Camp Station on the occasion of the Whitby Moors Rail Tour on the 6th of March 1965. This was a day when a number of the lines in the area closed, most notably the Whitby to Scarborough line, but also the through services from Whitby to Gromont, Goathland, Pickering and through to Rillington ceased the same day. So Rail Tour ran, and this locomotive is at the Filey Camp Station with lots of enthusiasts milling around on the platform there. Just to give you an idea of the camp station itself, here are the platforms. Okay, and there was a capacity really for quite a number of trains in its heyday. This is the end of the line with the buffer stops, and there was an underpass for passengers to go safely under the A165 road and into the camp complex, which is shown here. And to put it in perspective, there we are right by the coast and the cliffs, and then down onto the beach, running from Filey to Hunmanby area, and the Hunmanby Gap area. Filey Camp Station opened on the 10th of May 1947, as Billy Butlin had built the complex before the Second World War, but it was requisitioned by the government. But he insisted that it was on the grounds he take it back as soon as the Second World War was over, which he did. And so the camp opened on the 10th of May 1947. And this is a picture of the station in its last year of use, when there were technically still 4 platforms. Sad picture of Filey Camp Station after closure, looking towards the buffers. Another picture of Filey Camp Station in the last years of its use, and you can see already that the platforms, 2 of the platforms, no longer have track by them, just 2 remaining platforms. So the rationalisation of the Filey Camp Station had started already, and you can see that their signal box was where the 2 branches from the Royal Oak South and Royal Oak North junctions joined together to come into the camp. Now I'm going to move towards Filey, and Filey Station retains the overall roof designed by the architect George Townsend Andrews, and it was used for several stations on the line. The railway arrived at Filey on the 5th of October 1846, and the population, however, grew only very slowly. So it had been about 1,230 inhabitants in 1841, growing to 3,003 in 1901, and then grew to around 7,000, and probably has grown even further. In the 19th century, travellers were initially from the northeast, but surveys show that those staying in the town in the latter part of the 19th century, 17% were from London and 12% from the home counties. It had really become a true Edwardian resort, but by far the greatest number were day trippers on the excursion trains. And by contrast, the fish freight going out was 164 tonnes, compared with 7,797 tonnes from Scarborough, partly because Filey had no harbour. As we proceed north from Filey, the next station is Gristhorpe. And although one platform is hidden by vegetation, both platforms remain, as the whole line was double track, and this section was singled as part of rationalisation. It retains a gated crossing protected by semaphore signals operated from a small signal cabin, the only ones which are now left in the area, and themselves now with a limited shelf life. As we head further west, there is little trace today of Keeton Station, which was just to the east of the level crossing on the Keeton Cars Road. There was a double track at that stage, platforms, and there was a level crossing with gates, which was now replaced by barriers. A little further on, we actually joined the York to Scarborough line at Seymour Junction just before reaching Seymour Station, a cold and chilly place with bus shelters in winter, as I know only too well. Note that the Forge Valley line to Pickering branched off westwards just down the line to York. And finally, we cover the last 3 miles to Scarborough and pull up, hopefully, just short of the buffer stops under the main train shed. This train shed isn't very long, so other trains deliver less fortunate passengers into the full open air. And at this point, we have now completed our journey. So we'll have a look at a few images of the last part of the line. This is Filey Station as it is today with the overall train shed. And you can see the footbridge is actually within the station train shed area there, which has taken interesting design, taken quite a bit of engineering skill to make sure that that's there. Gristhorpe, this is the remains of the station at Gristhorpe, with the platform is now single line, but this would have been the Scarborough bound platform in very good condition really, and the station building a private dwelling. This architecture was just peculiar really to Gristhorpe. It wasn't typical of other stations on the line. And the other platform is buried in the vegetation here, the Filey Bank. It has, as I mentioned, gated crossing, signal cabin, and there are some semaphore signals still present, operated from this cabin, as well as the gates. And the signal person has to come out and operate those gates. These days, for health and safety reasons, the signal arms are protected by a safety cage. This is an engineering train on the line. This is a picture of Seymour Junction with an excursion train, probably coming from the north, but maybe from the south as well, hauled by a P-class diesel locomotive. It's coming off the Scarborough to York line, and it's heading towards Filey. Probably heading for Filey Camp Station, or just Filey if it's taken after the period when the camp station was closed. Now this is a map of the Seymour Junction area, and the train we just saw was turning where the cursor is here. And Seymour Station is where the red dot is at this point. And just note that just south of Seymour Junction, there was originally the junction for the Forge Valley line, which headed off towards Ayton and Pickering. And the black and white alternate stripes indicate that the track was single track as opposed to the double track of the main lines. Okay. This is a picture of where Seymour West Box, which no longer exists. It was removed around about 2000. Roughly speaking, the junction for the Forge Valley line to Pickering would have gone off behind the signal post, or even by the signal post, between the buildings that you can see then curved substantially round head towards Ayton. And the Forge Valley line got its name because the first station at Ayton was at the end of the Forge Valley, and also to distinguish it from another station named Ayton towards the Middlesbrough area. This is a picture of Seymour Station with its original shelter. This was demolished around about 1990 and afforded some protection for passengers on the line. We are looking now in the York direction, and the junction for the line to Filey would have gone off just perhaps out of sight beyond the cursor there, would have turned round and gone somewhere near those trees at that point. And you can see the Yorkshire Wolds in the background. This is Seymour Station today, looking towards Scarborough direction, and with none of the buildings of the original station left. Bus shelters here where you now have to purchase your tickets to travel on the train, and the one remaining Seymour station signal box or CMA signal box is located there. Now this picture shows the current CMA signal box. Again, we're a view taken in the York direction. Passengers have detrained and they're coming down the ramp to walk across the line, and the gate is locked by the signalman. It's interlocked with the signals so that if a train is due, it remains locked, and the signalman will only release it for passengers when trains have gone, so that passengers can safely cross over here to the waiting cars and onward travel. And note the old British Railway sign here, and that would have been the station house there. Scarborough was relatively small until the discovery of the springs, which were received as health-giving and attracted visitors needing health cures. However, the building of the York to Scarborough Railway, which was led by George Hudson and the York and North Midland Railway, led to a massive increase in visitors to Scarborough and hence the prosperity of the town. The first train was formed of 35 coaches, taking 3 hours for the journey from York to Scarborough, which stopped, interestingly, at Castle Howard, Malton and Ganton, and that ran in 1845, a year before our Hull to Scarborough route opened. In fact, the main station in Scarborough, known as Central, once boasted 7 platforms and was not able to cope with the tourist traffic and led to the opening of the Lonsborough Road excursion platforms in 1908, which closed in 1963. The location of this was linked to the fact that the only space available for carriage sidings for these excursion trains was at Northstead, which explains why there's still a large, long and wide open area of land on the course of the Scarborough to Whitby line there. Northstead being in the suburb in the north part of Scarborough. This line entered Scarborough through the 260-yard long Falsgrave Tunnel, which was hardly deep enough to cover, to be honest, with earth, and that was facing towards York. So it's very inconvenient for trains coming to the central station. In fact, local Whitby station trains had to reverse into the bay platform, known as number 1A, cut out at the end of the very long platform 1, which has recently seen the restoration of the longest platform seat or bench in the country. This is a view looking towards Scarborough, central as it was then, of the Lonsborough Road station, which was opened in 1908. And this here, the cursor is the through platform, but you can also see that there is a bay platform with the train to the left. And you can see the timbering platforms there. This is the Lonsborough Road station, Scarborough, looking in towards the York direction and really back towards Seamer. And this picture was probably taken with of a day trip of the employees on a day trip from Brewery in Burton-on-Trent coming to Scarborough for the day. So it's probably taken around about 1940. This is a train, a picture of a train taken in the 1960s at Lonsborough Road Station on the through platform, which was well over 300 yards long. And you can see that the excursion is here on the platform and a fine view of semaphore signals above. That train may have gone into Scarborough Central, but it may well have gone onto the Whitby line to the Northstead carriage sidings. Similar-ish view today of the Lonsborough Road Station platforms. A lot of building of housing has taken place in the area. The main Scarborough to York lines are here in fairly good condition. These sidings here have become overgrown, were overgrown when this photograph was taken. Steam excursions still use the line, so they will proceed up towards the turning point further up the line. There is one line remaining. And we come now into the station just known as Scarborough, what was Scarborough Central. And we have a picture here of the old and new forms of current trains at Scarborough. To the left, we have the Class 185 diesel multiple units. To the right, we have the so-called Nova 3 trains, which are essentially 5 coaches with a locomotive which pushes or pulls the train one end, and the driving band trailer when the driver is operating from the opposite end to that at which the locomotive is coupled. And finally, we're just proceeding to the buffer stops at Scarborough, and a train here is just short of the buffer stops. And the windows here, there's some lovely windows that have been added in recent times where we're to have looking at portraying local history in the area. Now, if you're interested in the railway of the Hull and Scarborough and other railways in the area, you may want to just have a look at some other reading that you can have a look at. So about the Hull and Scarborough line, there is The History of the Hull and Scarborough Railway by John Addiman and Bill Fawcett. And very recently, published by the Middleton Press in 2021, in the Country Railway Route series is the Hull to Scarborough, which has some very good photographs and also track layouts for those who are interested. Looking at other railways in the area, there are the railways around Whitby, 1 and 2, Martin Bairstow, railways of East Yorkshire, which I haven't included there. There's also the Malton and Driffield Junction Railway by Warwick Burton, and the railways of Rydale, Patrick Howard, and the Scarborough to Whitby Railway is a centenary volume by Robin Lidster, who writes locally on a wide variety of topics. If you want to watch rather than read, you may be interested in looking at YouTube and some of the videos on there. So there's the Lost Railways of Yorkshire, the Hudson Way, about the Beverley to Hull line by the Hull History Nerd. So if you Google that, and also he's produced the Lost Railways of Hull, where he's including the Hull Paragon to Withensea route. And generally, you might want to dip into the Ghost Train series, where this is a ghost train which goes along closed lines and crosses the route and the present day scenery along those routes, and also has maps of the original lines, or certainly old lines, and the current layouts as well. I hope you've enjoyed the talk on the Hull to Scarborough line, and thank you very much for listening.